Straight ahead on Law&Crime Daily. Opening statements are presented as an accused serial killer stands trial in Texas.
You're going to hear about how this individual right here attacked not just one, not just two, but three different individuals, leaving them for dead.
But first, Johnny Depp is back on the stand with his fourth day of testimony.
The only person that I have ever abused in my life is myself.
Plus, Depp's cross-examination gets heated.
These are all
also
hit pieces.
from May 10th,
These are drags,
2017.
Sir.
Mr. Depp,
This is a pathetic attempt.
Mr. Depp, please just respond to the question that I'm asking you.
And later,
It's nothing that anyone should have to sustain for any length of time when you're being demeaned, berated, judged.
we are live in Fairfax County, Virginia for week 3 of Depp vs. Heard. Law&Crime Daily covering court cases from coast to coast. Welcome everyone to Law&Crime Daily. I'm your host, Brian Buckmeyer. The Johnny Depp and Amber Heard defamation trial stretches into its 3rd week, with Depp back on the stand for a tough cross-examination Monday morning. Law&Crime's Anjanette Levy is here with some of those tough questions. Anjanette?
Yeah, Brian, the cross-examination began Monday morning with Amber Heard's lawyer, Ben Rottenborn, playing audio clips in which Depp and Heard were arguing, and Heard was claiming that Depp had abused her. Depp then shouted back at Heard using vulgar language. But to wrap up his cross-examination, he presented some evidence, a stack of articles, news stories that alluded to Depp's career going downhill before Amber Heard ever wrote that Washington Post op-ed back in 2018.
For years prior to the date that Ms. Heard wrote the op-ed, there were numerous negative news stories about you. You'd agree with that, correct?
Objection, compound.
All right, I'll sustain it to compound.
For years prior to 2018, when Amber wrote the op-ed, there were numerous negative news stories about you that were released into the public, correct?
Objection calls for speculation.
I'll allow it if you can answer.
By 2018, you're saying?
Correct.
Yes, it all started with Ms. Heard going directly to a court to get a TRO, which is with a bruise on her face and paparazzi. That was the sort of beginning of the ball rolling down the hill and gaining momentum.
There were lots of negative stories
me.
about you prior to May 27, 2016, when Amber went into court, correct?
Objection asked and answered.
Now it's 2016. I'll allow it if you can answer.
There were plenty of negative stories about you prior to that date, weren't there?
So I've been in the racket of Hollywood since 1984.
Mr. Depp, I'm asking you a yes or no question. There were plenty of negative news stories about you prior to May 27, 2016, correct?
From 1984 up until then, they're both. So, of course, people write negative stories.
Now, one of the audio clips that Ben Rottenborn played for the jury was a clip in which Amber Heard told Johnny Depp that he had put cigarette butts out on her, or lit cigarettes, I should say. On redirect, though, Depp's lawyers played longer portions of those clips, and Johnny Depp was told by Amber Heard repeatedly, move to the couch, and then he said that he got his cigarette on her.
I can certainly say that without hesitation, there is no way under the sun that I would flick a cigarette at her or burn her with a cigarette. If I flicked ashes and an ash got on her, but she's certainly not screaming out in pain as if a cigarette is being put out on her. That's ludicrous.
Now, several more audio recordings were played on redirect by Johnny Depp's lawyers, and in one, Johnny Depp told Amber Heard that he didn't want to be with her anymore. Amber Heard was crying and said, essentially, that she would die without him. Brian?
Andrew, just a few questions. Depp's colorful and correctly saying vulgar language was a focus on cross-examination, but do bad words pull this case into abuse?
Well, according to Ben Rottenborn, bad words do pull it into abuse. He started the cross-examination on Monday morning by asking Johnny Depp whether domestic abuse can be verbal or emotional, not necessarily just physical, and he said yes. Some of those vulgar words were played on the audio tapes, but then on redirect, they kind of clarified some of that. Obviously, he uses a lot of vulgar language. We've heard it in the text messages, we've heard it in the audio clips, and you have to wonder what the jury is making of all of this.
Yeah. And let's talk about those new recordings that were introduced on redirect. How do you think those move the case, giving some context to the kind of drunken pirate language that he might have been using?
Well, it's interesting because on the cross-examination, it appeared that Ben Rottenborn was playing pretty brief clips. On redirect, longer clips were played by Johnny Depp's attorney, and I think that you did get more context as to what was going on in those conversations at the time.
Now, Depp is off the stand as of Monday. More witnesses coming afterwards, but how did his attorney end that redirect examination?
It seemed to be a pretty powerful way to end it. She had played a clip in which Johnny Depp had recorded a phone call with Amber Heard, and Amber Heard had said something to Johnny Depp to the effect of, "Go ahead, Johnny, tell the world you're the victim of domestic violence." And his attorney asked him the final question, are you a victim of domestic violence, or what do you say to that? And Johnny Depp said, I am. He said, I am a victim of domestic violence, and that's how it ended.
Yeah, a powerful way to end that redirect. Now I think everyone's expecting for the next major part of testimony, and hopefully that's going to be Amber Heard taking the stand soon. Anjanette, we'll be right back with you. Still ahead on Law and Crime Daily, our coverage of the Johnny Depp versus Amber Heard defamation trial continues. And Depp gets fired up on the stand as cross-examination comes to an end. Hear the heated back and forth after this. Welcome back. We continue now with our Johnny Depp Amber Heard coverage. Cross-examination continues to a heated end on Monday when Depp pushes back against Heard's attorney.
Take a look at the stack of articles in front of you.
Yes, it's a stack of hit pieces.
Yes, the first one is called
by Ms. Heard's publicity team.
The first one is entitled, is from The Guardian. Do you see that?
Apparently drunk.
Apparently drunk Johnny Depp cut off at Hollywood Film Awards ceremony, correct?
That's what it says, yes, sir.
In the next article, Johnny Depp reportedly drank heavily and was constantly late on the new Pirates movie set. Did I read that right?
You did, reportedly.
The next article, also from May 10th, 2017. Mr. Depp,
this is a pathetic attempt.
The next document, headline, Johnny Depp allegedly showed up drunk to movie premiere, reports say. Did I read that correctly?
Reports say. This is hearsay.
The last one, vodka for breakfast, 72-hour drug binges, and spending sprees that beggar belief. Alison Boshoff reveals why Hollywood's reeling over what's being called Johnny Depp's career suicide note.
Who's Alison Boshoff and how does she know?
You became associated with those domestic abuse accusations that she made against you, correct?
I think that's clear.
And you understood that she became associated with those same accusations that she made, correct? You've testified to that.
Well, she had a choice, I didn't.
Joining us today is legal analyst Karen Nance, co-host Terry Austin, and Law and Crime's Anjanette Levy. Karen, does Depp getting angry on the stand hurt him, or do you think that heated exchange made Rottenborn look bad?
I believe it made Rottenborn look bad because he is the attorney. He's the one that should keep his calm, and he would cut off Mr. Depp when he was trying to answer the questions. It's understandable that a witness who's not familiar with being in the courtroom would say some things and not know the correct protocol, but you put the onus on the attorney, and he seemed angrier, Mr. Rottenborn, more so than Johnny Depp did. Johnny Depp did have his exchanges, but he was still relatively calm, I would say. He didn't appear any angrier than Mr. Rottenborn did.
Yeah, and just stylistically, you've got a likable witness. It's the same thing as if you're doing a forcible touching case of a small child. You got to tread lightly. Terry, Heard's attorneys have shown the jury messages where Depp says he cut his own finger, but Depp says that's just poorly worded. What do you think the jury will believe?
Well, I'm glad they talked about that very issue. It was a text message to Dr. Kipper where Johnny Depp said he cut off his right finger to remind him not to cut off the finger on his left hand. And of course, he wasn't admitting that he cut off his finger. He was not being literal, he said. It was similar to saying something like, you know, I bumped into a knife. And so he basically explained to the jury, look, he's been a guitarist. This is his life. It's so important to him. He definitely would not be cutting off his right or left finger, basically, because that's so important to him. And I do think that one of the things that Depp and his attorneys should do is to point out the fact that as a right-handed person, it would be virtually impossible for him to cut off the tip of his finger on his right hand. So he lied in the emergency room. He explained all that. And I think that he did a good job there. And he said he didn't want to implicate Amber and he didn't want to stop the production. So all good information.
Yeah. Now, Anjanette, after cross-examination had been done, they're trying to obviously poke holes in Depp's story. Do you think Heard's attorneys were successful in doing that?
You know, it's hard to say because you're listening to this and you hear the recordings in these like 11, 12-second snippets and you think to yourself, wow, this sounds awful. But then you hear the longer context of those audio clips and it's not excusing the use of vulgar language or anything like that or verbally, you know, possibly verbally abusive language. But I think the matter that's really interesting is the barrage of negative news stories about Johnny Depp before the op-ed. That's really what this could be about.
Yeah, I think there's a good plan of attack, but from what I understand, even when that barrage was coming out, he was still employed. So I'm going to see how Depp's attorneys handle that, but seemed like a red flag in my eyes at least. Well, coming up on Law and Crime Daily, a closer look into the allegedly abusive relationship of Johnny Depp and Amber Heard. Depp's attorneys have the floor for redirect examination, how he says Heard used his childhood abuse against him. Welcome back. Our coverage continues now in the Johnny Depp and Amber Heard defamation trial. On redirect, Depp said he was fired from the Pirates of the Caribbean franchise only days after Heard's op-ed was published. After that, he spoke more about her alleged abuse.
Ms. Heard was well aware of my past, my childhood, therefore was very adept at knowing exactly which buttons to push. So at this point, I mean, I felt like, well, I was that little boy again in my head, like, I guess I am incapable of doing anything right. I guess I will never be happy. I guess that this is who I am. It's nothing that anyone could sustain for any length of time. It's nothing that anyone should have to sustain for any length of time when you're being demeaned, berated, judged, and treated like a lesser animal, and treated as if I'm only surrounded by yes men, and that I'm a bad father, and that these things were endless. They were endless, and there was no call for them. It's hard to understand why someone that is supposed to love you could be that cruel.
Terry, break down the purpose of redirect for us, and how's Depp doing so far here?
Well, the purpose of a redirect is to make sure you rectify and clarify the points on cross-examination, and I think she did a great job doing that. She went point by point. She asked about that Washington Post article. She said basically when he saw it, he was surprised, he was shocked, he was hurt. He also talked about the fact that Disney He found out about them dropping him only after the article. And one of the other things I think she very much clarified was he wanted to play Captain Jack. They made it seem like, first of all, he wouldn't have had a chance to do it, but second of all, he didn't want to do it, about the $300 million and the 100 million llamas, that he definitely didn't want to do it. But the fact is, he did want to do it. He wanted to make sure that Captain Jack ended the right way. So I think she did a very good job of clarifying all of the points that cross-examination did, especially the point about being a monster and how he looked at his drug addiction as being the real monster.
Yeah. Now, Karen, that's kind of like the factual standpoint. One thing that stood out to me, it seemed as Depp's testimony continued, there were more and more objections. What do you think the reason for that was, and how did it kind of shape the testimony?
I believe that what the Amber's attorneys were trying to do was just to try to limit the information that was going to be coming out. And so if we keep objecting, and also we had a Depp's attorney objecting as well, I think what it does, if there's too many objections, it just causes the jury to get frustrated. It's like, what are you trying to keep out? There's information that we should know, and with these objections for just being shut out.
Yeah, definitely the optics and the strategy behind it can be one or the other. It's going to be I'm curious to see what the jury says at the end of the day when it comes to all this testimony coming in. But of course, we'll keep you updated here, the Law and Crime Network. When we come back, the retrial of accused serial killer Billy Chemirmir. We head to Texas for opening statements in this contentious case. Welcome back to Law and Crime Daily. In Texas, opening statements are presented in the retrial of accused serial killer Billy Chemirmir in Dallas Monday. A man indicted in the murders of 18 elderly women who died between 2016 and 2018 in 2 neighboring counties. Chemirmir is on trial for one of those deaths, Lou Harris, an 81-year-old Vietnamese immigrant who lived alone in her home in Plano, Texas. It was another incident that led police to Chemirmir. Another woman named Mary Annis Bartel was violently attacked in her apartment at an independent residential community for seniors, also in Plano. Police tracked her attacker to Chemirmir's apartment. He's charged with attempted murder in the attack against Bartel. Before his arrest, authorities say Chemirmir tossed a red jewelry box into a nearby dumpster, a key piece of evidence for the prosecution because it contained the name of Lou Harris inside the box. Prosecutors argue Chemirmir would pose as a maintenance man or healthcare worker to gain access to elderly people's homes. They say in a case of Lou Harris, Chemirmir smothered her with a pillow and stole her valuables. Monday morning began with the court addressing some last-minute issues and waiting on a juror who was late. Then the prosecution presented its opening statement.
You're going to hear about how this individual right here, Billy Chemirmir, how he attacked not just one, not just 2, but 3 different individuals in our county, leaving them for dead. The charges that I have to prove to you today is about one, Lou T. Harris. They were both checking out at a Walmart at the corner of Coit and Arapahoe. He's in one aisle, she's in the next, checking out at the exact same time. Now, what you're going to hear is that about 2 hours later, around 5:50, Mr. Chemirmir is seen by the Plano Police Department, and he is at a dumpster, and he is throwing out significant individualized items. And when they go back to look at the things that are in his hands at arrest and the things that he's discarding into the trash, they realize there's a name in here, and that name is Lou T. Van, her maiden name.
The defense waived presenting its openings until after the prosecution calls witnesses. Now, Terry, indicted for killing 18 women, but only on trial for one. Bartel died in 2020, but the jury will see her recorded testimony. That's a lot going on in this case. So how do you think this is all going to affect the jury in deciding this case?
You know, I think this jury is going to look at all of this evidence and try to figure out what exactly happened. It's a fact that in the first trial, there was no opening statement by the defense, and I think that they're going to have to go through all of the evidence here to try to figure out what did exactly happen. And I don't know if they're going to be able to this time have a hung jury, because there is so much evidence, or at least based on the prosecution's opening, it does seem as though there is a ton of evidence there.
Yeah, and I know for the prosecution, their hurdle in the first case was a bit of a misidentification. I don't think that Harris really could identify, but a family member did say that she typically gives $2 bills to people, and a $2 bill was found on Chemirmir. You mentioned about the opening statement. Now, interestingly enough, like you said, didn't happen in the first trial. In this second trial, they're doing it again. They're reserving the right to do it till after the prosecution's case. So does that make sense to you, or should have gone right in and attacked the case in opening?
You know what, Brian, it's interesting because obviously the defense has the right to reserve and not do an opening statement. And it does make sense because they have an opportunity to see what the evidence is, to see what the prosecution is going to say. And I think it's a smart move. Sometimes if you don't have a story, it's better to just sit back and wait. Of course, the jury wants to know what the explanation is, but if you can wait to see what all the evidence is and then wrap your story around that, it's better for the defense.
Yeah, and doing the opening and closing like that kind of gives them two bites of the apple. Well, thank you very much, Terry. And thank you for joining us here on Law and Crime Daily. We'll see you next time as we discuss justice in America.